What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Delphine and today I'm going to be showing you how I use the single pattern to draft out 3 styles. As you can see on the screen, I'm already putting on one, and in subsequent videos I'll be showing you how I use the pattern to create the styles. So for this is just the pattern drafting, and I'll be showing you how I managed to achieve this. Truthfully, it was a little bit taxing, but I'm glad I actually did because the results were so nice. So if you're interested in this, let's get to it. But before that, if you're a new subscriber, welcome to my channel. For my old subscriber, I'm grateful you've been here with me. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. So without wasting much of your time, let's get to it. So using my basic pattern bodice, which I drafted previously, I traced out the front part of this pattern similarly to the back, and now I'm going to draft the first part, which is the halter top. Moving from the neckline, I'm measuring my bust point, which is about 10.5 inches, and from the center front I'm moving inwards by my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which is 4.5 inches for me. Now I extend this line to my under bust of 13.5 inches and my half length of 16 inches. Using a straight line, I'm going to connect these 3 points. Now from the armhole, I'm going down by 1 inch. From this point, I'm going to create a circle using the difference from my under bust to my bust point, which is about 3 inches, and I'll use this mark and mark on both sides of the dot line. As you can see, I have this right here, so I'm simply going to merge the line from the side seam to this one I just made right now. This will give me the shape I want for the yoke of this pattern. Moving to the center front, I'm simply going to measure how deep I want the neckline to be. For me, I think 10 inches will look fine. So I'm marking my 10 inches right here at the center front, and I'm simply going to create a curve connecting it to the 3 inches mark I made initially. I'm going to join this point to the midline, that's the dot line. So as you can see, I've created a curve connecting both sides. Now on this point, this midline, I'm going to move out by 1 inch on both sides, creating a dot. Now moving downwards, I'm going to mark half an inch on both sides of the dart line, creating the dart legs from the under the waistline and connecting it to that of the under bust. So I've created my dart, and now I'm going to connect my neck depth to the neck width. So on a normal, if I had wanted to continue this as maybe a corset, I would have extended this dart upwards, but since I want it to be a yoke, I'm leaving it like so. So using a straight line, I'm going to connect the neck depth to the neck width. Moving on to this part, I want the sleeve to be 2 inches wide. So I'm simply going to create a new curve connecting the armhole. Just like I did in the previous video on how to make a halter neck top, I'm going to remove the excess at this curve. So I'm simply extending a line from the midpoint of the armhole downwards, but I'll go up at the bust point by ½ inch since I do not want the dart to get to the bust point. So now I'm connecting this line to the midpoint of the armhole, and from both sides of it I'm going out by 1 inch and I'm marking my points like so. And now I'm going to connect these lines to that point I marked ½ inch above the bust line. So now after drawing this line, I'm going to measure both legs to know if there's a difference between the two. And since there's a difference, I'm simply measuring up the shorter one to level up with the longer one, so that by the time I'm sewing it, I will not have a shorter dart and a longer one. So this kind of gives them equal length. Now I'm using this line to recreate a new curve connecting the dart leg to the armhole. So that's about all for this pattern. Now I'm going to I've traced out the parts for this halter neck using the green marker. So what I did here was I folded the midpoint of this dart inwards, touching the other leg of the dart. Then I simply marked it. This will ensure that whenever I'm cutting my pattern, I will have the exact measurement I need. So for this, I'm going to cut out the yoke and then the lower part of the bodice for the halter neck top. Moving on to the second pattern, which is a bustier, I'm simply going to create a neck depth. So I'll be using 4 inches from the bust point and about 7 inches from the shoulder. So I'm using 7 inches downwards and I'm marking this point across to meet the armhole. So from this point, I'm simply going to connect it to the neckline, the neck depth I want, since I'm maintaining the same neck depth with that of the halter neck. Now I'm using a straight line to connect it to the 7 inches point I made. Now from this point, I'm going in by 1.5 inch. And I'm connecting this to the neck, to the armhole. Something I failed to mention was I went in from the center front by 3 inches to get to this point. So this is quite easy at this moment. So the next thing I just need to do is to label and then add the sleeve of this. It's kind of a strappy bust here. So I'm maintaining the same that I used for the other pattern. I'm simply going to fold again like I did previously, and I'll rule a line to join the 2 points together. Before I move on to draft out the strappy sleeve, I'm simply going to use my blue pen to mark out the main bodice so that I will use it as a pattern for the style 3, which is a cowl neck top. So now I'm simply highlighting my neck width, my shoulder slope, my armhole, so moving on to mark my sleeve for the bustier, I'm simply going ahead to mark out half from the initial neck width and then connecting it to the first point at the bustier. Then now I'm going to connect it to the other line. So this gives me about 1.5 inch of strap. So that completes this pattern. For the cowl neck top, I'm simply going to use the full pattern I made earlier, and I'm placing it on a fresh pattern paper Now placing it like so, I'm extending the upper side of the pattern inwards as much as I can. So as you can see from this, I'm only pushing in the shoulder side of this pattern, and I ensure that the waist side is placed at the center front of the new pattern paper. Now I'm going to use a straight line to connect this shoulder point to the center front. Moving to the shoulder, I'm extending the shoulder line as well, as I want to create pleats at the end of this pattern. So now I'm using the extension to create a new curve for the armhole, and I'm connecting it to this part of the pattern like so. Moving forward, I'm going to mark out other points of my pattern piece. Now getting to this point, I'll use a straight line to connect this point I marked to the center front of the new pattern paper. Now, since I'm done, I'm simply going to use my pencil to connect all the lines, all the points I marked. This will be our new neckline, and this will be our new shoulder. And then I'm connecting these points I marked like so. So this creates our pattern for the cowl neck. I'm going ahead to mark it. I'm placing my center front and labeling it as our style 1. This is my green line, and this is our cowl neck pattern. So guys, I've succeeded in creating 3 patterns. So at the end of the day, for this cowl neck, I'll create pleats at the shoulder. So I've done all the patterns for this. Now I'm going ahead to trace out each pattern separately on a pattern paper. Since I've done so for the cowl neck, I'm simply going to repeat the same process for the bustier and the halter neck. Now I have this table that comes in handy and works like a light box for me. So I'm simply placing a light source underneath the transparent table and placing a fresh pattern paper on top of the main pattern. So using the outlined lines, the lines on the new pattern paper, I'm going to trace out the part I want for the halter neck. So I've traced out the neck depth, the neckline. Now I'm tracing out the armhole. As I'm doing it, I'll keep shifting the light source being the table. So if you do not have a transparent source of light, you can use a tracing paper which is readily available. I'll be leaving a link on the description section for how where you can get a tracing paper, and equally a light box. But this is, if you have something like this, a transparent table or surface where you can put a light source and trace out your pattern, then you can use that as well. So I'm simply going to create and trace out my lines, mark out my lines, and now I'll have a separate pattern for my halter neck top. So now I'm done. As you can see, I now have a single piece for my halter neck top. So this is the center front, and this is the neckline, front neckline, and this is the first and second section for the under bust side. So now I have to trace out the bustier pattern. Similarly to the previous one, I'm going to place a fresh pattern paper on top the main pattern, and using my light source like I did before, I'm putting it beneath the transparent table, and I'll trace out the section which I use red marker. So this section will serve as my bustier pattern. As you can see, I'm already tracing out the straps. Now I'm tracing the neck depth, the neckline, and the armhole. I'll go ahead to trace out the remaining part of the pattern. So getting to this point, I'm going to mark out my dart legs and the bust points I marked earlier on the main pattern paper. Now I'm going to create a new standard dart from this point downwards, connecting it to the two dart legs. Since this is not going to have a yoke, I'm simply creating a simple standard dart. So now I'm using the same dart I created for the halter neck, and I'm placing it at this section of the armhole curve. So guys, that's about all for the patterns. So now I already have my 3 patterns drafted out from the major pattern. So I'm simply labeling this. This is the strap, center front, and to be cut on a fold. This is style 3. So as you can see, this is my major piece containing all the patterns. Now I have my first pattern piece, which will be our cowl neck. So this is the cowl neck pattern, then the halter top, and finally the bustier. So moving on to the back piece, I'm going to have traced out the back piece using my basic pattern I drafted earlier on, which is out on the channel. Now I'm going to still use the pattern I created earlier for all 3 patterns to trace out the parts that I want for the back. So for the bustier, I'm simply going to trace out the sleeve, then extend it down to where I want the back piece to start. First things first, I'm going to trace out the halter top back piece. So I'm simply going to trace out the shoulder, ensuring that I have a space for my zip allowance at the center part of the fresh pattern paper. So I'm simply going to trace out the shoulder. So this piece is actually for, this strap is actually for the bustier, since the bustier is the only pattern that has strap. So I'm tracing the bustier right now. So I've traced out the front strap, and now I'm going to extend it downwards to where I want the back to start. So now I simply marked out this point, and I'm extending it to my armhole using a straight line. Now I'm going to bring down the straps downwards. So this completes the back panel for the bustier. Now similarly, the back part of the halter neck doesn't have a strap since it's kind of a show back top. So I'm simply going to use this pattern for both the bustier and the halter neck. Now I'm simply marking out my zip allowance, ensuring that I remove the zipper bulge by going in by half an inch at the waistline and connecting it to the 1 inch at the top of the pattern. So this will surely take care of any bulge I will have at that point. And I'm extending my line to join the zipper allowance. So I'm going to mark out the points for the darts. So now I'm simply going to label. This is style 2 and 3, that's the halter top and the bustier. The halter top will come without the sleeve at the back, while the bustier will have the sleeve. So this is my back strap, and I'm going to add half an inch on each side of the strap. This is the front strap. So what I'm doing right now is simply to label all parts so that when I cut them out, I'll not have confusion at all. Now that I have all parts of my pattern, I'm going to be using this pattern to cut on fabric and make the dresses, which I'll be posting in the channel shortly. So thank you guys for watching. This will be all for now. See you in my next one. Remember to like, share and subscribe. Bye.